We have with us Mr. Dušan Hrenek, who is the principal advisor in the DG Environment, DG Climate Change of the EU Commission. Ambroise Fayele, who is Vice President of the European Investment Bank. We have Vesela Černeva, who is the co-founder of Sofia Forum. Welcome again. And we have Gregor Valnuteretis from Stockholm Environment Institute, who is head of engagement and operations. And we have, I don't see him here, Pavel Zamplicický, director of Ministry of Environment in the Czech Republic. So welcome everybody. I see only 4 of the panelists. I don't see the 5th one. So we are still missing one. As it has been said, we should discuss and we should have this panel is about European Green Deal. You know, as we have seen, some of the issues that we should touch on this panel is obviously what is happening with the COVID-19 and the Green Deal. Does the COVID-19 also and the restart after the COVID-19 will help the Green Deal, or will the Green Deal help the restart? We should also discuss the competitiveness of the European industry. Is the Green Deal going to help or not help the competitiveness of the European industry? Are we alone in it? We are talking about that world should embrace this European Green Deal. Obviously, we should try to do that, but so far, except for the Paris Agreement, we are in it so far alone. Very important is also what are we going to do with the sectors to make absolutely sure that each sector will contribute. You know that the automotive industry says we are contributing more than the others, etc., etc. So what can we do about it? Now the order of the panelists. I will ask you each of you to speak, please, for not more than 3 minutes in your initial remarks. Please do not do it more short remarks. We don't have much time. Mr. Ambroise is going to leave us at 4 o'clock. So we will make sure that we'll give place to him in the debate immediately after the panelists. And the last 20 minutes, as you have heard already, will be transferred to Prague, and it will be a debate with the audience, and it will be moderated directly from Prague. So, without any further ado, I will ask Dušan. Dušan, first initial remark, please. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Ivan. Firstly, I would like to highlight that the European Green Deal is our roadmap to climate neutrality by 2050. Also, effective protection of biodiversity, leading to zero pollution, but also at the same time, it's our growth strategy to transform economy, make it greener, stronger, fairer, and also more resilient. COVID-19 crisis drastically changed our lives in recent months and damaged the economy. To recover, we need huge investments. And there is also opportunity to make right investments in order to tackle current problems, but also climate change threats. I would point out 3 issues that we need. We need clear targets. We need also appropriate legislative framework and instruments, and also sufficient funding. Regarding targets, in order to advance quickly, the European Commission recently proposed to increase 2030 emission reduction targets to at least 55%. This is going to be difficult, but we have to do it, and we can do it. There are already proven technologies, sufficient knowledge, and also European companies, they have innovative capacity to lead and also to benefit from first mover advantage. But we don't need only this general target, but also targets for all sectors. Enhance our emission trading system, boost renewable energy, energy efficiency, and also transform energy taxation. The European Commission is working on it, and next year we will propose new legislation in many areas. Regarding funding, I trust that EU budget for next 7 years plus next generation EU funding will make a real difference, and it will lead to new investments in building renovation, boosting renewable energy, charging infrastructure, and many other areas. I would like to highlight that 37% of next generation EU budget will be spent directly on Green Deal. On international scene, of course, the EU alone cannot solve climate change. We need our partners, but already there is a clear evidence that we are not alone, that we are leading by example and showing that it's possible to decrease emissions, but also at the same time to grow and to transform the economy. And now there are positive signs from Japan, South Korea, China, and I trust also that the next US president will follow his commitments from the election campaign. So I'm quite optimistic that the next 10 years, they will be really decisive in our objective to fulfill Paris Agreement and to deal with global warming. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dusan. And we are obviously going to come back to the financing, to the partnership, to the global problem which we have, also to the relation with the United States. As you know, John Kerry will be probably appointed the envoy for environment in the Biden's administration, and we'll come back to this during the debate. Ambroise, European Investment Bank. We don't have him with. I thought that he will be hidden somewhere, so he didn't join us. I'm sorry, but there is one window open, and I thought that he was behind it. He is not. Vesela, what about your opening remarks, please?
Thank you very much. And I will pick it up exactly where Dusan stopped. This election was indeed one of the biggest unknowns for European policy, also on the green agenda. The other unknown, as Ivan mentioned at the beginning, was the impact of the pandemic. And many people, many experts, but I think many citizens also were worried that at the end of the day, the anti-pandemic measures are going to overtake the green agenda, both in terms of political capital, in terms of political attention, if you will, but also in terms of financial resources. And of course, it was great to see that the Commission succeeded to uphold its commitment. And I'm saying this not only as a personal opinion, but also we did, ECFR did public opinion surveys in 2020 in 15 member states, which show that in every member state, support for more attention to be paid to tackling climate change has grown. It has grown with those who have become more supportive through the corona crisis, outstripping those who are less so in every of the countries concerned. This is also the expert opinion We have another instrument, a Coalition Explorer, in which we offer 20 priorities to experts in all of the member states. And climate has climbed since 2018 from 10th to 3rd place. So obviously, this is an issue which is very much close to Europeans' hearts at both levels. Now, what is the international environment for this to succeed? Joe Biden is probably going to bring the US back to the Paris Agreement on day one. China has likewise announced during the UN General Assembly that it wants to become carbon neutral before 2060. And there are also many other significant players who are aiming to do that. Now, the question is how much of that is going to really materialize, and we can go further in depth on this in the discussion, but both in the US and in China, there are constraints and there are stumbling blocks which should not be neglected. And the other thing I want to mark, and I'm going to finish with this, there are also many skeptical Europeans, and this is one thing we should not forget. And here I'm talking also about European governments, some of whom point out that Europe is responsible only for under 10% of the green gas emissions. Convincing governments and publics in Europe is not a done deal, and this is something that I guess we will also discuss further. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Ursula, and thank you mentioning the international aspect of it. It's going to be interesting indeed to see what will happen in the United States, how the Chinese will respect what they have said, and they are obviously not the only ones. We have now with us Ambroise. Ambroise, welcome. I hope that you can hear us. We have started without you.
I can hear you, but I'm sorry to join you late.
No, don't worry about it. It's okay. And I know that you have to also leave earlier, so come late, leave early. But at 4 o'clock, we will let you know, let you go. Please, a few remarks about short 3 minutes remarks about the role of the EIB. How do you see it? What's the EIB going to do in to support the Green Deal? You have been supporting the industry during the crisis in 2000, 2009, 8, 9. Now it is obviously the COVID, the Green Deal, everything. What's the role of the EIB? Ambroise? Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
But Ambroise cannot. So can the Prague people make sure that Ambroise can hear us, because I can't hear him neither. Ambroise, can you unmute yourself? Okay, we lost him again. We will then go to Gregor. Gregor, your initial 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for inviting me today. And I'm stepping in for my colleague Åsa Persson, who was supposed to speak here. Yes, I think I'm just going to latch on to what Mr. Schenek and Mrs. Geneva already said about the EU's ambition. And it should be noted that there is currently a decision on the table, a proposal on the table between the Council and the Parliament, of course, on 55%. And of course, increase there in particularly the methodologies that are used to actually track our progress. We will see where this is going. And I think this will be actually the first litmus test of if we can see an alignment between the COVID-19 recovery and the EU's Green Deal. Will countries back a more ambitious emission reduction target to 2030? I think everybody agrees now on 2050, but 2030 is really the one where we are setting, we're putting us on a track of either, succeeding or losing. our race against the 2 degrees target. So this is the first thing. I want to introduce some science here, just to kind of get people to understand what the Green Deal and the announcements by China and Korea and Japan meant. There's a report out today by our colleagues at Climate Analytics and the Overseas Development Institute that said that if we can see, if the Green Deal gets implemented and China, Japan, and South Korea actually move towards carbon neutrality in 2050 or 2060 respectively, we might be able to achieve 2.3 degrees increase by 2100. So we're way off still the 2 degree or exactly 1.5 degree Paris degree. So we don't just need to align the COVID recovery with Paris and the Green Deal, we actually need to be even more ambitious. And then if we're just looking at what has been funded so far, just the investments out of COVID recovery packages, we've been tracking this together with our colleagues at the Energy Policy Tracker, and we found that in Europe alone, there's around 123 billion euros currently being spent on fossil fuels, versus the 92 billion on clean and renewable in the wake of COVID. So we're actually not building better. We're actually, locking in emissions. So what is then really needed for us to make sure that our COVID recovery aligns with the Green Deal and puts us on a target of achieving the Paris Agreement? Well, we really need to make sure that the member states' recovery and resilience plans are actually aligned. We actually spend percent that the Commission wants us to spend on climate that is spent on climate. And there are, of course, certain governments and certain political forces at play that do not want to spend that much on climate. Climate energy plans need to be aligned, of course. That is a process that's been dragging on for last year. And we need to, of course, make sure that this process is just and nobody's left behind. And there's extensive body research, including SEI, we've produced on the principles of how the transition can look like. And last comments here on the financing question. I personally work a lot on finance, and financing is not the issue. We've done lots of work on this, and this is backed up by other colleagues. It's not the financing itself, the capital itself. It's policies that create markets and demands, and they are still lacking. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. We will surely come back on the 55%, and we will also come back on the issue that you have raised about member states, which is important. Ambroise, we have you back again. So welcome. Can you hear me?
Be quick, because
okay,
you never know how long it will last.
Before you disappear, why don't we have your first remarks? I have mentioned that we would like to hear from you shortly what the EIB is going to do.
Well, thank you very much, and apologies for these technical problems. I would like to say that we at the European Bank for investment, so we are the bank of the European Union. So our shareholders are the member states of the European Union, and our member states that are in our board have decided last week to take a very important decision. Two very important decisions that will build what we call the Climate Bank Roadmap. The first decision is to make an operational plan to significantly increase the volume of activity we will do for climate environment. So we have now a minimum amount that is 25% of our business plan. Our business plan is around 60 billion a year, so we have to do minimum 15. Actually, we are closer to 20 billion euros, mostly in Europe, but a bit also outside of Europe. And the objective is to double this to 50% of our of business plan by 2025. So in really a matter of years. So it means that we will need to do much more energy efficiency, much more renewable energy, much more innovation related to climate projects, etc. And the second thing that the board has decided is that by year end, so in 2021, 100% of our projects will be Paris aligned. And actually, the important thing with Paris alignment for us is that it is good to do much more climate projects, but all institutions will do other projects as well. When we support, for example, vaccines, or when we support health-related projects, they are not climate. But the big thing is that they need to be Paris aligned, meaning that we will follow the EU taxonomy that is approved, that has been approved this year, and that we will apply the principle that is do not significant harm. So to be eligible to EIB financing, a project needs to not do significant harm to reaching the climate targets. And that's an objective that we will apply to all our projects. So the roadmap is very ambitious. We are very, very pleased that it has been taken by consensus, meaning that actually there is a broader recognition within the bank that these climate objectives are really key ones these days, and that we need to make sure that we are well placed to strengthen our role as a climate EU bank. One last word, what that means is also that it means that we need to make sure that transition is just, that this is what we call a just transition. And that, of course, there are geographies, there are countries, there are regions which have a path towards climate neutrality that is more challenging than others. And these are the ones that we need to help more with support, more with discussion with the authorities, more with support from all the Europeans, actually support a scheme like the Just Transition Mechanism, for example, that is going to be put in place, like the Modernization Fund that will help greening the energy efficiency programs in Central and Eastern European countries. I mean, all this has become for us advisory, a big target also, because we will not reach our goals if part of Europe feels that are not completely in support of their policies.
Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, it has been always one of the key problems and a key issue to have what you indirectly say, a level playing field. If we don't have a level playing field, we are going to lose part of the member states, to put it mildly. I will come back to you on a few questions immediately after the next opening remarks of Pavel. Pavel, what about the Czech Republic?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think it's just thanks for your invitation, and it's just right moment because I can continue with let's say debate on financial flows, because just today we had a meeting with the State Environmental Fund, because the Czech Republic is in preparation of huge financial sources which will be devoted to a European Green Deal, to higher ambitions. And I think it's the right moment to plan, because we can do in parallel and provide money for the economic recovery and for higher climate and energy ambitions which are ahead of us. So in total, the Czech Republic will have roughly 156 billion of the Czech crown available for the green transition in the next 10 years. So we discussed the details of the modernization fund, for instance, how to improve our energy sector, namely higher capacity in renewable energy, energy efficiency in housing, a transformation of our heating sector, which is still based from 60% on coal. So there are huge incentives ahead of us, and we need to plan carefully. The same is the issue of just transition. We have 3 regions in the Czech Republic which are still heavily dependent on coal. So it's another area. So we have a lot of tasks now, and I think it's a unique opportunity to invest in a right way and how to overcome the problems with COVID crisis and move forward quickly.
Thank you very much, Pavel. It's good to hear that the Czech Republic has a plan, and the Czech Republic obviously takes it seriously, because when Vesela mentioned that some member states are more skeptical, sometimes one puts the Czech Republic into this group as well. I'm not saying that Czech Republic is there. I'm saying that sometimes it's happening. Ambroise, as you have to leave us, I have one or two questions to you. And if any of you have questions to each other, please raise your finger, raise your hand, and I will give you a word. And you can also discuss with each other. I would appreciate that very much, based obviously on the opening remarks and what are you doing. Ambroise, what about the cooperation between the EIB and the EUI, the European University Institute? So you have created a chair, Stolberg. Stolberg has been one of the fathers of the Green Deal, I would almost dare to say. What's the purpose of it? What do you expect from this cooperation? Because it's not only a chair. It's also a closer cooperation between a financial institute and the university institute in Florence.
Well, let me start by saying very quickly that to our Czech friend who has just spoken, that there was the first meeting of the Modernization Fund, the fund that is going to support greening investments in a number of European countries, and we were very much impressed by the fact that the Czech Republic did come with a plan on energy efficiency, on buildings in particular. So that's absolutely something that is going to be key to reach the targets in Europe. And there are indeed these are very costly projects, but these are absolutely essential projects that we also would be very pleased to help support. On the cooperation with the EUI in Florence, I mean, we always thought, and we have an institute at the EIB that is in charge of that. We always thought that the cooperation with the academic world is extremely important, and more generally the connection with innovators, with those who are able to think behind what we do in our daily lives is also very important. So that's why we have decided to join the chair on climate change. Actually, the first director of it will be the former DG Klima. So that's also something that we hope will be of high quality. We need high quality. We need to increase awareness about how climate issues are for researchers. Let me give you an example. We know now that our objective is to reach climate neutrality by 2050. We know that to reach climate neutrality by 2050, we need innovation. We need innovation that we are not aware of today. That will happen in 2030, in 2035, and we don't even know what it is about. But we know that we will need, and we know that they will come. For that, you need to increase, the attractiveness of this sector to young researchers, to young students, to make sure that the ecosystem around increasing our role as the EU Climate Bank is going to be successful. The EUI will not be the only one. We have also we are strengthening, for example, in Paris, a chair also with Sciences Po, which is I mean, we want to develop that not only in Florence but in other institutions.
Gregor?
Yes, this is directed to both Ambroise and Dusan. I've heard a lot about innovation and on targets. Just on the research that we have done here, we actually often find that financing is not the key barrier. It is actually creating the market conditions for these new types of innovations or technologies that are already, in a technology readiness level that is close to commercialization. Green hydrogen being probably the most promising option right now. Maybe you can expand a little bit on what you see what are the kinds of policies that you can envision going forward to really exploit the disruptive potential of these innovations that are available today.
Ambras, why don't we go first with you, because you have to leave in 2 minutes.
Yeah, actually, I will try to stay for 10 minutes, but that's fine. Let me say, yes, your question is absolutely a fundamental one. For that, actually, we need two things. We need to be supportive of those who are taking risks. And for example, we have signed last year with actually Commissioner Moedas, who was the former commissioner on research, a big project. It was 100 million euros with the Gates Foundation, which is called Breakthrough Energy Venture Debt. And these are to support projects that are small projects. I mean, we know that almost all of them are going to fail. But if 2 or 3 succeed, even one, that could make the breakthrough that we will have for the energy policy that will help us then succeed in the climate policy. And I think that's the point that I would like to make. We need to have the right instruments. Instruments in terms of, for example, in terms of supporting very early stage, very risky projects, very small projects also often. And instrument in terms of, for example, having first loss pieces, so that we can bring other investors who would be interested to finance this kind of, to support, because financing still, when this is that risky at early stage, it is, I mean, we are not in excess of capital for that. More generally, European companies fall short in terms of capital. And that's something that we need in terms of equity, to make it broader. And that's an issue that we need to help find solutions. And one of the solutions may be to find the appropriate financial instruments with the European Commission, so that we can bring this financing at the right level and the right time to these innovators.
Yes, thank you very much. Dushan, the question was also directed to you.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, and I completely agree with previous comments, and there is a need for substantial financing. So according to our assessment, in the next 10 years, we should invest yearly 350 billion euros more in energy, in infrastructure than in the previous 10 years. So definitely there is a deficit of funding, and we need to work in several areas. It's not only funding options from the EU, but also to support private investment, because private investment is crucial, and encourage also bank investment funds to focus more on green investment. And that's also behind our sustainable finance strategy, international sustainable finance forum. And there are many initiatives also in the private sector. They are working on it to make also assessment of assets more transparent, and to encourage companies to invest in green projects. So there's the one part. On the other part, also we need to support different projects from small scale, but also large projects in different areas, and we have several funds for that. I would mention, for example, innovation fund that is going to be funded through ETS system from allocation. So this is more for large-scale projects, really to scale up and also to invest in new energy, new innovative approaches on longer time frame. But we have also Horizon Europe program. It's the biggest research and innovation program in the world, and there are different possibilities, and 35% of all funds will be dedicated to climate. Also, the last call recently, it focused on Green Deal projects, and this is going to be really important for research and innovation in the EU. But of course, also EU structural investment funds can be used for research and innovation. And as I mentioned earlier, now we are going to have the biggest amount for investment on the EU level. That is going to be the largest budget, unprecedented in the EU, and globally it's going to be more than 1,800 billion euros. 30% has to go to the Green Deal financing from the whole budget, and 37% of Next Generation EU also should go to Green Deal projects. So in general, there are many instruments. I can mention also EU Invest, managed together with EIB. There are other possibilities, and of course, there are many options, but we need to do more also with private enterprises and also financing sector in general.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's move a little bit to the international cooperation. Vesela, you have mentioned the United States, you have mentioned China, and I have also said at the beginning that it looks like that John Kerry, who has been very instrumental in bringing the United States to Paris, so to say, is going to return back in the Biden's administration as the envoy for environment, for climate. How do we bring these big countries and others to the to work with us? We have ambitions that we want to be the world leaders, but we need the others as well. Today, the EU finances 40% of all, on the global basis, of all climate-oriented projects. That cannot stay. That can change. It has to change. What should we do in order to bring everybody to the same table, especially the big players?
From a diplomatic standpoint, it will be obviously about restoring kind of a multilateral effort on climate. That is probably going to be easier than the other aspects. Because I think politically it will be very important both for the Biden administration, but also for the Chinese government for now to show a very high level of constructivity, of constructive behavior towards this issue. However, I think the diplomatic side is only part of the picture. If the EU wants to really kind of uphold some sort of coherence on the international level, it will have also to do a lot of work on standards. And I guess this is what the Commission does all the time, trying to create standards that can be set internationally, and to maintain technological leadership. And this is probably the most difficult bit, because if we talk about China, in order to fulfill its target, it's estimated that the Chinese government will have to invest something like 15 trillion US dollars in basically overhauling its economy. And this is a very, very big amount of money, which will
We have again a technical problem, so we lost Vesela for the moment. Gregor, Vesela, you are back. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes. So if you can quickly
sorry,
finish your...
I didn't realize. I will finish very quickly. Right now,
We do.
Europe, for instance, is a leader in wind turbines and in hydrogen technologies. That leadership needs to be upheld. This is not going to be very easy, but without that, Europe will not be able to be a standard setter. So I think this is a matter of competitiveness and a matter of diplomacy at the same time.
Gregor, you had a question or remark.
I think I already no, I said goodbye to Ambassa.
You raised your
Sorry.
hand again.
Yeah, no, I said goodbye to Ambassa. I just gave a wink off. I didn't have a question, but I can maybe can add a few things there to what was just said on the diplomacy. I think that's an important thing to understand, that there are, so of course, some emerging countries that need to be part of this discussion, and they are actually much more dependent almost on the European market. Brazil comes to mind, Indonesia comes to mind, Vietnam comes to mind. All these countries are there are existing trade relations, and there, of course, it's very important for the EU not just to collaborate on them on the multilateral front, but also to impose environmental requirements and safeguards that, for example, Brazil is discontinuing simply put, irresponsible trade policy, which carries enormous deforestation risk and thereby climate risks. So that's another avenue the European Union can take, aside from technology development and climate negotiations at the multilateral level.
Should we use, for instance, the CO2 taxation, customs duties? Should we use trade instruments for this, Gregor? We have them.
Well, they're the Commission, and I'm sure that someone else might be a better speaker for this than me personally. But I think there is, of course, the opportunity to raise, or there are, of course, thoughts of having a carbon border adjustment mechanism. Research shows that, of course, every single step to put a price on carbon is a positive one, because right now it is treated as an externality both by governments and by businesses. So that's helpful. It is surprising, I should say, how little resistance the carbon border adjustment mechanism has faced so far. And China originally was very cautious, but they haven't been, they haven't called the trade war on us yet. Maybe that's because there was Trump and it was distracted maybe some of the attention. But even the European industry seems to, get acquainted with the idea, and they might see it as a necessary next step to make sure that they're not getting out-competed. It's important on this matter to also underline that efforts to introduce a carbon border adjustment mechanism, of course, has to be aligned with the WTO rules. But actually, WTO rules, they are supporting taxation or tariffs based on environmental standards. That's not something that we have to invent. That is actually already in the WTO treaties. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pavel. Did you, Dushan? I will come back to you in a second on this one. Pavel, you had a remark or question?
Yes, on let's say a carbon border adjustment mechanism, we will see, of course, more details next year, because we look forward to seeing the detailed proposal from the European Commission. Obviously, it's difficult topic because it must be connected as well with revision of the whole EU ETS directive, in which we have still free allocation for industries which are in a risk of carbon leakage. So it's a very complicated issue. But yeah, I think we need to see both in parallel the process of the new legislation, which will be to protect the European industry and carbon market, which will be fit for this purpose. So I think that we will see more detail. But in the Czech Republic, we have ongoing position because for some industries, like for instance, steel industry or cement, they would welcome the introducing of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. But for others which are more dependent on products or semi-products which they need for final production, they are more vulnerable to impacts of such mechanisms. So, like for instance, car industry. So it's we need to be very careful when designing such instruments on its impacts on different parts of industry.
Dusan, very quickly, we are coming slowly to the end of the panel. A short remark. How are we going to make sure that every sector contributes and that there will be no sectors, as it has been indirectly mentioned by Pavel, that might be losing competitiveness because others are gaining? How is the Commission going to deal with this, one of the key issues?
Now we are preparing impact assessment in different sectors, and on that we will propose legislation next year in June. And of course, we will look at different sectors. Not all sectors can contribute in the same way. Some sectors are more difficult to reduce emissions. It's maybe easier for energy sector than for industry, and also transport is quite sensitive. So we need to look in all sectors and to find a solution how we can achieve at least 55% of reduction altogether. So to have global holistic view. And regarding border adjustment mechanism, Commission will propose it also next year. The best would be that we don't need it because other countries would follow our standards, our efforts, but we have to have this tool if others are not so advanced as us, they don't pay the same attention to climate, to environment, so we need this tool. In general, we have very active climate diplomacy. Every year, twice a year, we have delivery of our climate démarche, discussing with all countries, and also using our development assistance to help countries to advance on climate action. So in general, there are many tools. As Pavel mentioned, for the moment, some sensitive sectors are protected also through free emission allowances. So this is something that it's assessed together.
Yes, thank you very much. You know that the harmonization of standards, international acceptance of standards has been always one of the biggest problems we had in any kind of trade negotiations that we had with third countries. We are coming to the end of the panel. I would like to ask you one question to all of you, and if you can give me a 10 seconds answer. We have said at the beginning that the Green Deal will help us to restart the economy after the COVID crisis. Can you tell me, please, why and what are from your point of view, the key arguments from it? But please keep it to 10 to 20 seconds. Vesela, we start with you.
Very good. I think this is a good tool for the EU to maintain its global soft power, and I hope we're successful in that.
Thank you very much. Dusan?
I think that now we have funds and instruments to start to rebuild and rebuild better. And for example, like a renovation of buildings, it gives us like all benefits, more jobs, better impact for people, and also positive for the climate.
Thank you very much. Gregor?
Yeah, in the same line. Green recovery projects and investments have the highest multiplier, both in terms of social outcomes and environmental impact.
Pavel?
Yeah, simply the biggest amount of money in history will flow to the area of green investments and let's say recovery. So it must go hand in hand, and it will bring together that we will overcome the current economic problems due to COVID crisis.
Yes, I believe that you are right. We will finish this part of the panel. I can just say a few buzzwords that went through this panel. I think it is 55% it can be reached, and carbon neutrality in 50 it can, but we need international cooperation, enormous investment in innovation. We need to make sure that every member state and every sector is contributing and it's on board with us. And last but not least, we need also private investment. We need public-private partnership. I'm giving the word to Prague. Please continue the discussion with the audience. And thank you very much to all the panelists.
Thank you very much, Ivan, and thank you also for presenting this debate, and thank you all for your interesting answers and your interesting points of view. And as promised, I'm back. I'm here with questions of our public. So let's start with the first one. How should the EU deal with the imbalance in production and consumption of emissions? We are decreasing the emissions of production, but still consume goods that pollute outside the EU. So let's start, for example, with Vesela Cherneva.
Well, this is the other side of the coin that we just discussed. International cooperation is supposed to equalize those standards, and the EU should be in the forefront of pushing for those. And I think it is going to be probably harder than it looks like now, simply because many societies don't see eye to eye with us on the need for green measures. But I think further down the line, public pressure is going to make policies also in other corners of the world change. And frankly, this is inevitable. And I guess this is why the Commission should be also ambitious on its kind of multilateral approaches.
Thank you very much. I'll pass the floor to Dusan Hranak. I'm interested in your opinion.
Yeah, thanks. I think that we have to tackle on two fronts. Also internally in the EU, so really to lead in sustainable consumption. So really we have to focus on how we produce, consume, also how we eat, heat, so transport, that we have to also behave sustainably. So there is a need to decrease consumption to make it also more circular. So if we have better means for to repair, to recycle, that we would decrease our consumption, so less import from outside of the EU. So this is definitely something that we have to do it. So circular economy, but also sustainable consumption, even encouraging people to change behavior. And second part is to focus on trade, also not to import products that they are not sustainable or they are produced in harmful way. So, for example, it could be wood or other products. So really to make it subject to sustainable criteria. And of course, as Vesela mentioned, we have to also focus on cooperation and try to also encourage other countries to go in our direction. And as I mentioned earlier, leading by example is really a good policy, and I think that more and more countries will follow our example.
Thank you. I'll remind to those who are joining us right now that we are answering to public questions. The first one is, how should the EU deal with the imbalance in production and consumption of emissions? And I'll pass the floor to Gregor Velturius to give us his opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think the first thing is that there needs to be a better understanding on the availability of data that can help us link the environmental impacts of production, and that linking then that to consumption. So particularly, I'm thinking of commodity trades in the tropics, right? And we at SDI have done, we've actually developed a database that helps you link the production of soy, palm oil, and other deforestation-linked commodities from exports in the tropics all the way into the imports ports in Europe. There's quite a lot of knowledge out there, so it's all about the political ambition to operationalize this knowledge into better transparency, monitoring, evaluation, and eventually safeguards as part of bilateral, multilateral trade agreements. On the consumption side, as a social scientist, I am sometimes worried that we are linking behavioral change to this Galtan issue of localized internationals, urbanites, ruralists, and I would advise those who are in this field to try to depoliticize some of the behavioral changes that we need to reach the Paris Agreement. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, and I'll pass the floor also to Pavel Zamyslitsky.
Yes, I think a lot of has been said by previous speakers, but I would like to add that, let's say, hopefully growing effort in achieving Paris Agreement goals will help us to, for instance, enhance carbon pricing around the world. So it should help to have similar conditions in all parts of the world and in all regions. It means to, let's say, import less goods without CO2 price, and on the EU level to have such mechanisms like we discussed the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which should bring the price where is needed.
Thank you very much for your answer, and thank you all for your answers. And we'll go to the other question. We've got here the question number 2. Does the EU have the roadmap on how to decrease emissions from other types of transport than cars, ships, or air transport? So I'll pass the floor to Dusan Hranek. Thank you.
Yes, we are working on it. Like, for example, now aviation emissions inside of the EU are already included in the emission trading system. And now we are analyzing how to include also maritime shipping into ETS, and also transport. That it's one option to include it in the ETS. For a moment, on transport, road transport, we deal mainly with CO2 standards, and that is quite a successful policy that really it's working, and new cars, they have lower CO2 emissions. So now we are studying all sectors, and all sectors, they have to contribute to 2030 target. Even transport sector, it should contribute about 55% reduction. So it's quite ambitious target, and next June the Commission will propose legislation how to achieve it in all sectors. So how to include transport in emission trading system, and also how to make our rules for CO2 car emissions stricter.
Thank you very much. Gregor Voltorius, do you have something to add to your point of view?
If it's, I was disconnected there for a very short second. If that's on transport, then I can't really say much on that, except for maybe it's helpful to see this as a broader alignment in the private sector in general. What I would like to see is that there's good regulation out there, but what is missing sometimes is that these companies are continuing to invest a significant amount of their capex into technologies that shouldn't really be part of the 2050 vision that we all have. It was already mentioned that the EU is, of course, going to publish its new sustainable finance strategy, and part of that strategy should maybe include then requirements for companies, including the transport sector, to explain, okay, so how are you going to transition your business and align it with the Green Deal, and by doing so unlocking some of the COVID money, but also generally some of the investments into green and sustainability activities that are out there.
Thank you very much. I will pass the floor one more time to Mr. Hrenek. We have got here another question. Does the European Union have any plan on how to ensure the process of requalification of workers from coal industry across the member states?
Yes, there are several instruments that could be used. So one is Just Transition Fund, and in general, Just Transition Mechanism that finances from this fund could be used, or they should be used also for rescuing of workers, to adapt to the new situation, to find a new job and be socially protected. So it's there is one possibility, but also other possibilities are in framework of Next Generation EU and European structural funds. And that we need to focus on new jobs, so also green jobs, digital jobs, but to make a transition also for coal regions. So really substantial funds should be used by member states for taking care of people that they are affected by the transition in coal regions, but also in carbon intensive region, this industry that it's carbon intensive. So there are funds and they should be used largely by member states.
Thank you. Ms. Vesela Cherneva, is it, in your opinion, sufficient, this plan?
Look, I think it's not only a problem of funds. I think it's also a bit of an issue of political will, and how much governments can look the longer, at the longer perspective. Usually governments look at a perspective of 4 years max, right? And this is why this issue is tricky, because it needs continuous efforts by a number of governments, successive governments. And somebody has to pay the social price for that. And I think the leadership here is extremely important, but also communicating to people what it exactly means. Because I think behind the question is also the worry of people that, they will simply have to lose their jobs, and they will have to change their career in the middle of, or even towards the end of it. And this is what is difficult to tackle. At the same time, people say, look, other countries in the world don't have to do this. I mean, again, to quote the Chinese example, they say we're going to have this very ambitious target, but at the same time, they have now given more permissions to build coal power plants this year than last year and the year before combined. So people wonder what is, where is, whether our leadership role is not going a bit too far. So I think a lot of that has to do with politics and not only with funds.
Thank you very much. And we have got here one more question. How are EU's ambitions for global climate leadership affected or hindered by the persisting dependence on external energy sources? Shouldn't the current investment go into renewable sources instead of further building of gas pipeline infrastructure? Please, Pavel Zamyslitsky, your point of view.
Yeah, right question. I think that the goal of climate neutrality by 2050 will help us in reducing the energy dependence of the EU and all member states. It's for sure. But on the other hand, we need something like a transitional fuel, and it looks like that in case of the Czech Republic is going to be natural gas in some cases, because, for instance, central heating systems, which are largely connected with heating of people in the Czech Republic. So I think for this moment we cannot say, okay, let's stop all import of fossil fuels and let's switch to green energy. It would be nice, but I think technically it's impossible. And but I would fully agree that the final goal is to dramatically reduce our dependence on imported fossil fuels, and that I think that this fact will help our economy a lot. But yeah, for at least 1 or 2 decades, we still need to live with imports of fuels to the EU.
Thank you very much. Dusan Hrenek, may I ask you also for an answer on this question? Thank you very much.
Yes, and definitely I agree that we should invest more into renewable energy, and now it's becoming cheaper, so that it's a really right time to invest and to stop supporting this EU money to fossil fuels. And actually, European Investment Bank already decided on the next year they will stop supporting fossil fuel projects. So I think that's a positive announcement. And I agree that we need transition period. It's impossible to change our energy overnight. So we will need a transition period, and gas is less dangerous for environment. So there is less CO2 emission coming from gas, and it's accepted as a transitional energy source. But definitely we should not invest in stranded assets, so assets that they will not be useful, and they will not contribute to our goals. So renewable energy, new sources like hydrogen, that it's something that we should focus, and also use our funds really for innovative approaches and clean energy.
Thank you very much. One more time, I would like to thank Ivan for his questions and thank you all, our guests, our wonderful guests, and your answers and your points of view. We are out of time, so see you maybe next time. Thank you very much.